Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Power, Season 1, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Very powerful episode, all across the board. But let's start off with Tundi's side of things in Saudi Arabia, because obviously we got a peek of it at the end of last episode, how different countries plan on responding to this on a more law-based side of things. And there was like one particular country that was kind of like, yeah, it's illegal, and it's all, and that's what it is in Saudi Arabia. Because when he was there, the taxi driver was like, yeah, we don't have that. That's not an issue for us here because those videos and all that is banned. Even women using that power is banned. And so, obviously, Tundi's making his story just, seeing how this new development, this new power in the world has changed how, how the world looks at it. I mean, obviously, even in a country specifically like Saudi Arabia, which has its own complications because of women's rights in that country. So it never crossed my mind of like, oh yeah, like with this kind of being the worldwide phenomenon that it is, like what does that mean for Saudi Arabia? And there was a woman, what was her name? Like, I think it was Alma, who was like using her powers. She wasn't using them on anyone. She was just trying it out. And these little girls are watching from their window as this guy just walks up and like smacks her in the face with a stick. Like, not saying like every guy was okay with it, but they are the extremes. I think not just in Saudi Arabia, but anywhere in the world, there are always going to be extremes. But it's like, yeah, like what she did was illegal, and he just felt it was the right thing to do, just to like hit her like that. It seemed like he was just some dude. And stuff popped off, and it led to the police getting involved, and it also led to a crowd like jumping around her. It's like, right, we got to get her to safety. And obviously Tundi's nearby, and he's like recording everything and seeing this view of just like everyone united and on this front. And to him, it was like there was something beautiful about it. Like all these women standing up. It's like, right, like see us, hear us, and make sure like everyone's like, make sure you get this video out there so they can see what they did to her. They hurt her just because she was using her electricity. She wasn't hurting anybody. She wasn't using on anybody. She was just like testing it out. She was just, because it's a part of a new thing for a lot of people. And, it's a scary thing when like half the population just suddenly gains a superpower, and it's scary. And once again, just like how every country ends up reacting to it. And obviously they're trying to like stop people from recording it. And even at one point, some of the women in the crowd end up killing the guards. It's in self-defense because obviously they're getting super aggro, pushing and hitting on people. And the crowd grows larger and larger. And they're trying to speak their mind. And there was a young woman beside Tundi that ends up getting shot. And I guess the bullet, like when it passed through her, like hit his arm. He meets another woman, Naura, who ends up, because I guess she's more familiar with the situation, being like, okay, you're a journalist. It's like, right, do you have a fixer? I guess someone who is kind of here to be by your side, like as you're going through this, like, because he's still a novice. It seems like to me this is like his first like legit job working for CNN. And obviously it rallies the crowd even more. It's just one thing after another. It ends up being this constant like push and pull situation of just like the more they like, I mean, I guess it's more push and push. It's like the more the women are getting pushed, the more they push back, because it is something that was already bubbling beneath the surface in Saudi Arabia, in a place where women may feel like they don't have, might not feel like it's been showcased, that they don't have the power to, they are constantly pushed and silenced. Now we have the power to make you see us, to make you hear us. And like I said, there was even this woman whose like husband or somebody was keeping her hostage in her own house. They went in and saved her, and then it passed the power on to her. And it's like, and that was the beautiful thing. And he was talking about, it's like, right, as like, from one touch to another, like this large crowd, like spreading this power, in so many ways, both literal senses of just the power of let's rise up together and make a change, plus this literal power of electricity. And obviously there started being some they try to like march their way through, and they end up at these tanks, and they try to electrocute and like basically burn everyone inside this tank. I was like, that's about to get hardcore. But one of the guys on top like started shooting, but one of the women in the crowd's like, that's my son. It's like, God, I'm gonna butcher the phrase. Wasn't it like sons kneel at the feet of their mothers or something, or because I think it is like, right, you're all somebody's son. Like, would you really be doing this to like your sister or your mother? Like, your mother is, your mom, And I think that was enough to make everyone kind of like realize like what this is about. And especially it was one of the women was like, all right, let's like, help them down. But it's like another person's like, no, what are you doing? But she's like, we're here to stop them, not kill them. And that right there in itself showcases the division of the crowd, like division of just people in general, because, it's the different approaches of, nonviolence of like versus violence of like, right, we're not here to kill them, we're meant to stop them, because those earlier situations it was a pure self-defense situation, like they're trying to hurt us, this is what we're doing to stop them, we're stopping them, but we don't need to kill them, especially if we can get them on our side to make them see like what this is all about. So got a lot of them to lower their arms, but then Tundi ended up watching like this woman just like, and she wasn't just like killing the guard, she was like torturing him, because most likely she's seen it happen to her. I mean, not only most likely did it happen to her, she probably has witnessed it so many times where something's been happened to someone that she knew or she saw and couldn't do anything about it. Now I can. It's like, oh, you like messing with people, now I get to mess with you. And, and she was kind of toying with him like a predator with its prey, and Tony tried to get in the way, and that literally led to the crowd, like a good chunk of the women turning against him, trying to zap him, but Naura ended up saving him. It's very similar to the Nadudi situation of like, right, you kind of interfered again, because, and as Nara says, like, your job here is to observe, not interfere, because it's also like I think it's, and that whole Naura thing is really interesting. I mean, on many different fronts. Because, well, first and foremost, that Tony went back to his hotel room and all of his stuff was like rifled through. Luckily, all his footage is with him. Like, everything he has is on him, so they couldn't find the footage because he has all of it. He hadn't been back to his room yet. So obviously they knew he was a journalist and he was kind of here alone. So they probably I wonder. I mean, countries, not just putting Saudi Arabia in that. I'm sure probably the same thing would happen in China as well, because China, like, the government has a lot of control in China. So I could definitely see like if them like, oh, there's a journalist that entered our country. Like, I wonder, would they take, like, do red flags go up on a governmental level? I mean, I'm sure every government has their red flags about like, oh, there's someone entered the country. Like, to that extent, I don't, definitely in a country where the government has complete and utter control, like China, I'm sure they probably like know who is entering in their country and who, so, because it's not like Tundi had like come back, or not that we're aware of, had come back to his room at any point in time. So even though, because he had lied and said like, oh, I came here like on a student visa or whatever, it's kind of his cover for why he was here, but they still saw through that. So they must have ran his credentials or whatever, something like that. That's what I'm saying. But the point I was going on before I went on my diatribe is that now it was kind of, I think it's the thing of, hey, you aren't from here, like, you're not allowed to interfere because this isn't your country to really interfere in. Like, it's easier for an outsider to talk about what's happening inside our country, but it's like your job here, specifically as a journalist, isn't to interfere. It's to showcase what's here, because she's saying like, right, you doing what you did could not only get you killed, but me killed, because me having to step into the fire to pull you out is going to draw attention to me and put me in danger, as well as other people, anyone trying to help. So you can do a little more harm than good. When you try to directly interfere like that. Your job is just to showcase these stories, to showcase this to the world. And Naura said something interesting where he was like, because she's getting him out of the country, and he's like, I could get you out too. And she's like, oh, like, why? She's like, you're trying to save me? Oh, that's sweet that you like, oh, you've been in my country for what, 24 hours, and you think you know it ins and out. And I thought that was such a beautiful perspective on it. Like, yes, she's like, my country, yes, it has its issues, but the fact is, she's like, my dad allowed me to go to Egypt, and I studied, and I was educated, and I wanted to come back here, and I want to make sure that other women have that opportunity. She's like, I love my country. It's just a thing of my country is beautiful. Yes, it has its nasty side of it, but if we can fix it, she's like, I know my country. I know my country can be better. I know my country should be better. But that doesn't mean I'm going to run away from it because I love my country. Because she even turns it back to Tundi. It's like, well, how do you think it feels when, how do you feel when people tell you, oh, how bad they feel for you being born in the country you are? That there is a situation where, yes, there are countries that are, maybe more well developed than others, and it's like, yes, there are hardships, but it is that interesting thing of I think it is an interesting point of view where it's like, right, yes, even I can't really speak to all that goes down in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I've read, and even if I visited Saudi Arabia and saw it firsthand, I'm not the one that has to live there. So, am I saying everyone has Naura's perspective? I mean, there probably are women who would want to get out of that country, but for her, it's like, no, for me, it's more important to stay here, to be able to help women have the opportunities I was fortunate enough to have. But it's like, yeah, even Tundi admitted, yeah, it is a bit irritating when people kind of even talk to him about, because it's like, right, you're from an African country that's probably not as well off as maybe another country, as in any other more quote unquote developed country or whatever. It could be something like that. And I thought that was such an interesting perspective because I think Tundi had never thought about it that way. I had never looked at it through that lens. And I thought that was such an interesting perspective to have of oh, you thought you were going to come here and kind of be my white knight? Oh, you saved me. And it's like, no, I'm here for a reason. I'm not going to run away. Why would I leave this country that I love? I want to stay here and I want to fix the problems. And I thought that was so beautiful. And even from Tundi's perspective, looking through the footage, it's kind of like yes, he believes that there is going to be, for every action, there is a reaction, but he does believe that there will be a bounce back. It's like, right, we are going to one side of this reckoning, and obviously there's going to be a strike back from that, but he believes that we can go back to that middle ground, that there can be an equality found at the end of the day of this, because he refers to it as this will be a moment in history known as the Day of the Girls. Or is it just it's the title of the episode. It's either Day of Girls or just the Day of the Girls. So I thought that was such a powerful element in the episode. Another side of the episode is Roxy's side of things, which obviously her dad showcased one of the people that killed her mom. It's like, yeah, he drowned, he's dead, so it's done. But for her, it's like, no, there was another guy, but her dad's like, no, leave it as is. And it's like, the big question is why won't her dad do it? I mean, you went this far, why not go after the other guy? Maybe this guy was kind of a nobody you could kill, and the other guy was somebody. Maybe that's it. Because it might just be also a matter of who you know, and these people might be connected. That person might be enough lower on the totem pole, enough for you to kill him without too much consequence, or maybe a deal was struck. It's like, hey, they kind of even the score a little bit. My daughter's mom was killed, so retribution is we get to kill one of the people. Maybe it's like, once again, he was a sacrificial lamb. Maybe. Once again, I don't know if he had anything to do with Roxy's mom's death. Once again, whoever it was knew that she was going to be at the wedding and that she wasn't supposed to be back that early. Wasn't supposed to be there at all when they went after her mom. And Roxy wanted to get, she wanted revenge, and just her father, it's like, right, you're supposed to be my dad, but you won't have my back on this. And so she goes partying with Daryl, because the whole point was to kind of get her mind off of things, but the drugs and the alcohol didn't subside any of that. And even if it was momentarily, it just impaired her judgment even. I mean, Roxy's kind of been showcased to be the hothead she is regardless. I think, once again, no matter how her dad wants to put it, I think she got her hotheadedness from him in particular, but she was super riled up, and so her brother Terry ended up spilling the beans about who was responsible. Because for her, it's like, this was my mom. How would you feel if it was your mom? And it's like, hey, you're dad's going to look after you. You're his favorite. It's like, no, I'm not. Like, why is he giving Ricky the business? But it's like, yeah, dad wants to protect you because he doesn't want you. He loves you so much that you are his favorite. He wants you to have nothing to do with this life. He wants you to have your own life away from all kind of I think maybe for her dad, it's like, he came into this life doing what he needed to do. This is all I've ever known. You have other opportunities. Your brothers, maybe they don't have the other opportunity. It sounds like Daryl's going off to a college. Because she's like, oh, you're going off to your shitty college soon. So it's like your university soon. So, well, I'm going to be left here. So it's like, I think for her, it's like, don't act like, we really aren't like that close. Like, your mom, like, he loves your mom more than he loves me and my mom, and he loves you guys more. And it's like, but I do believe there is some truth of, like, despite Roxy being kind of like the screw up in, like, Barbara's eyes and some of the others' eyes, I think he does legitimately love his daughter. He just keeps her at a distance because maybe he doesn't want this world to be because it's like, you don't have to. I had to go down this route because it's all I had to make a name for myself. But I did what I did, so you won't have to do what I did. So, but Roxy was so filled with rage, and, you know, once again, she's hyped up on drugs. She's got alcohol in her system, and they went and tracked down the guy that killed her mom. And the guy wasn't remorseful. It's like, she's like, you killed my mom. It's like, he's like, now who was it again? It's like, he knew exactly who it was. You know, based on like, hey, you know who my dad is, and he did that to gloat. And obviously her powers didn't come out at first, but then she attacked him again, and she ultimately ended up zapping and killing him, and stuff popped off. But then you see it in that moment when after she killed him, because that's the first time she's ever killed anyone, and in that moment she looks up at the window, home dude's daughter was watching. It's like, it's a vicious cycle of, right, you were so caught up in your revenge, you didn't realize you were literally doing the same thing that was done to you. Your mom was killed in front of you. Sadly, you were knocked out when it happened, but it's like, right, your mom still was murdered in front of you, and you did the same thing to this girl, regardless of who he was. So now it's just this endless cycle of like, she's going to want revenge against you. It's an endless cycle, and stuff popped off at that point. Some people started shooting, and Terry ended up getting shot and killed. It's like, your revenge, not only did you do to another family what was done to you, now one of your brothers is dead. And Barbara already didn't like you. She definitely doesn't like you now. Your dad might even go as far as trying to disown you. Like, he's going to have to calm Barbara down. Who knows how Daryl and Ricky are going to feel about you going forward. And it's like, she's already beating herself up of like, this is my fault. This is my fault. Oh crap, I killed someone. Oh crap, Terry's dead. Like, that's a lot, you know? It's like, getting your revenge. Was it worth it in the end, in her case? Because, you know, and that, once again, when it comes to revenge, always make two graves, for your enemy and for yourself, because it's always going to come back to you. Sadly, at this moment, she's not the one who had to pay the price. Her brother Terry was. So it's still kind of like a thing of like, regardless of it all, like, this situation's super fucked. So where we go from here is definitely going to be interested to see what the aftermath of that, because this is going to be a retaliation thing, most likely. Okay, you hit us, we're going to hit back. But it's also like, right, Terry died in the process, so her dad might try to mediate this situation, but it might be beyond mediation. But also his son died, and Barbara might be like, nah, fuck it, kill them. You know, we need to go to war. So Roxy's situation, because the whole point was like, this is a delicate balance of like, let's not pop off when we don't need to. Roxy kind of lit the fuse, and it might be a thing of like, either her dad might say like, all right, we gotta go to war, or the other side might be like, we gotta go to war, and there's no calming this down, and it turns into like a mob gang war. So we'll see what ends up happening on that front. And then the other side of the episode is Allie. Allie using more and more of her power, trying to gain more control over it. I did look into credits this episode, because I brought it up previously. I was like, is Adina Porter the voice of that Allie's hearing? Sure is. Yeah, I was like, I kept hearing, I was like, that sounds like Adina Porter. Her name's in the credits. I was like, oh, okay. So probably I would have found out sooner if I'd like looked at the credits, but I wanted to avoid that just because, especially in the first episode, because I don't want to take the chance. I'll see like, oh, the rest of the season of, and because I avoid the previews as much as possible. So that's why I tend to not, like, I try to like skip through the credits and stuff just in case, like, because I want to make, it's just a like little idiosyncrasy of mine. Either way. So because of that, because of her showcase, like, learning how to use her powers more. I even love, like, what was it, Savannah has to, like, she's over there, like, because it's like, they can't have razors, so she's, like, basically using her electricity to burn the hairs off her legs, so she can, like, that's her version of shaving. But we see that Allie has a very Now, I don't know if this is something everyone can learn, or is it specifically an Allie thing of she can use her powers without you seeing it. Like it can be non-perceivable to the human eye. And we see her like being able to manipulate the chicken and then eventually, make it stop, but she ended up making it permanently stop. So she killed it. Sister Veronica was not too happy about that. But this becomes like a difference of opinion between Sister Veronica and Sister Maria. Maria's all about Allie being like, hey, Allie, like, the fact is I feel like she could lead. She reminds me so much of you, kind of like the rebel that you've been. But for Sister Veronica, it's like, I don't trust her. There's just something about her. And I love that Maria was like, yeah, Jesus said like, oh, bring food and clothe people, but only if they have a valid ID. It's like, maybe it's a thing of Sister Veronica sees too much of her young, wild self. Like maybe it's like, I've gained experience and knowledge and control by being older and being careful, where she feels like maybe Allie's too much of a wild storm. She's too much of a hurricane that's going to change things too quickly. Things need to be like a slow process change rather than kind of changing all at once. And maybe that's kind of why, like I said, like maybe just Allie reminds her too much of her younger self. Maybe it's like, oh, my younger self was like wild and ready to change the world all at once, but it can't happen all at once because there's going to be too much pushback in that regard. There's always going to be pushback, but if you push too hard, too fast, like the pushback's going to be like massive. So, but I mean, we kind of learn a little bit about the stories of some of the other women at the place, because one of Savannah in particular, we find out she lost her daughter because of her power. She's like, yeah, I never like used it or to hurt anybody, but they decided because I could be a danger to my daughter, she was taken from me. And Allie's trying to lead the charge because the voice is telling her to lead the charge. Like, this is what you've been searching for, a place you belong. So, you need to convince these women, because like Veronica's like, yeah, the moment the storm's over, she's out of here. But it's like, right, you got to find a way to make this your permanent home. And so she rallies the troops. It's like, hey, like, the fact of the matter is, maybe we've been pushed around for so long, and this whole conversation of equality, well, maybe God as a woman finally said, like, you know what, fuck it, what if I flip the switch and now, oh, women have all these powers now. I did like the basic tutorial they gave on TV explaining how this all works. The EOD is what it's called. The electric organ discharge is kind of what the power is being referred to as. And they basically explain like, God, what was it? It's basically like, there's these plates inside of the organ, and electrons like flow in it in one direction. If they pass through it in one direction, that's when you get the discharge. Once again, the conversation too of, oh, the power can come out of your hands, but it can come out anywhere in your, we know Allie can send it through her feet. We don't know if anyone else has gotten to that point. But once again, Allie's also in a position where her power, she can not make it not seen. We see that with her bringing a bird back to life, and that was enough to make Maria go like, oh, wow, like, I always knew you were special, Eve. And so things are kind of changing there. There was even that, I love that conversation between, was it, oh, God, the two women, it's like, I don't think her name was Lauren, it's like Lowen and, Luann, I think, maybe. And was it Gordy? And they had this interesting conversation being like, oh, have you used your electricity in your coochie? And she's like, no, I'm not going to be down there with my hands anytime soon because I don't want to blow off my foof. She's like, I don't want to be the thing I'm known for. And like Gordy was like, yeah, my mom told me like if I ever touch myself down there, I'd go blind. She's like, I did start looking at my grandma's weirdly. I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, because like my grandma wore glasses for reading. I had to rewind it. I was like, I didn't get it. And the second time through, I was like, okay, I get it. It's like, I was like, oh God. I was like, I like that. And then they did their thing. And I was like, oh, that's I mean, interesting. Because there's not a lot of things that showcase, same, streaming service and everything at The Boys. But I'm like, I feel like, superpowered sex doesn't come up that often, so like it's always interesting when you kind of see like the buddings elements of that, like it utilizing it in that regard. but I guess, like I said, I think her name is Luan. Like I guess she has like maybe seizures or whatever. And, it's like, okay, like give her space. She'll come out of it eventually. Eve used her powers despite Veronica saying like, don't do it. It's like, shut up, let me do this. And ended up like bringing her out of it. So it's like, hey, Allie's just gaining more and more like attention. Like, oh my God, look what she did. And Sister Veronica's like, kind of like, I prayed on it, and it's like, you can't be here. You got to go. Like, if you're under my roof, you have to follow my rules. But Allie's like, no, we don't have to do what you want anymore. Now, we didn't see all the girls leave, but she definitely has a squad, very, Jesus-esque, that she has her followers. Once again, the whole, obviously the bit on the biblical lane of things, she is Eve, and it is kind of like a little religious spot. So, like, Allie's story is definitely going to have a lot of like religious connotations to it, especially because she views the voice in her head as God, like the one that's leading her to lead the charge. Once again, for what purposes, who knows? But, like, once again, is that voice just a manifestation of her own psyche, or, like I said, is someone communicating with her, or, what's going on here? We see her kind of with her followers, kind of like she felt like that freedom that she's kind of feeling and enjoying, and it's just where things kind of go from there. On that front, it's going to be interesting too. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.